off of this 2500. Like I said, we're waiting on the engine stand or the engine hoist. But we got this Transit 250, E350 or 250, whatever you want to call it. It's a diesel Ford Transit with I'm pretty sure it's Mercedes engine. It's 3.7 diesel. Came in, got dropped off, wouldn't run, and it's full of DEF. They said they were locked out of it, but they weren't locked out of it. It has something going on. And so we're just working through the problem right now. I noticed that the DPF is 89% full, which will cause weird issues, but it shouldn't turn the engine off, right? It should be warning you, saying that it's not regenning or whatever the case may be. But right now, it's actually, the soot load's going up instead of down. See the percentage right here? It was at 89% full, and now we're at 90. So, obviously something's going on with the dosing system or the fuel system, because before I got it to run, and it would run great, and then it would just turn off randomly. I unplugged the mass airflow sensor, then it was stuck at 1,000 RPMs, and it would still run, but it's still not running good because it has like a weird shake to it. And I'm kind of curious if they put DEF in the diesel tank, because the fuel pressure is rising to where it should be and then slowly petering off. So it's almost like the injection pump is going, or possibly if this is a Mercedes engine, I'm pretty sure it is. They have the fuel rail relief on it. What they call it, something funny. I don't know what it's a quantity sensor, I think. But then on the injection pump, it actually has a quality, or maybe that's called the quantity. I don't know Mercedes lingo. I'm used to Caterpillar diesels, not Mercedes diesels. But I mean, they're all the same. So on the last Mercedes I worked on, the GLK 250, where the customer did pour DEF into it, it wiped out the quantity sensor, the fuel rail, the fuel pump, you know, the whole 9 yards, the injectors, everything. But when it came in, it wouldn't run, and I put injectors in it. After I cleaned out everything, I put injectors in it, got it to start, and it ran great besides idle. Idle, it would hiccup, kind of miss a little bit, but it would still stay running. And keep in mind, the vehicles, you know, this is different. This is a different story. But the GLK had like 280,000 miles on it. The thing was only worth like $4 grand, right? So if you see in all my videos, there's the engine sitting on the floor. For the amount of money that we spent on, or we're going to spend on that engine, it was actually cheaper to buy a used engine and rob the parts off of it and put it into the car, right? Because the fuel rail, I think, was like $1,200. The sensor alone on the fuel rail was like $400. The injection pump sensor was a couple $100. In all, it was like $3 grand worth of parts just in sensors and a fuel rail, and we got the whole engine for $2,300. And what we should have done, we put brand new injectors in it, but we should have robbed the injectors out of the used engine, but we didn't. But for this one, I'm not 100% sure what's actually going on with it. It is acting a little funny. No codes, no nothing. I know a lot of people on the internet have the same issue, and you know, people just say all kinds of crazy things. You know, the throttle body, the mass airflow sensor. None of that stuff is really gonna make a diesel not run, right? It can, but it won't, right? It won't make it stutter when it's idling. Like, it's not gonna happen. Now this did, when I was revving it up, it did throw a code for low intake volume. So I mean, it could be a clogged air filter, which I actually have the air box open right now. So if it is clogged, we're bypassing it right now. But you gotta take the whole air system off, or the whole intake pipes off to get to the air filter on these things. And that was like mid-engine run. I won't turn it off because I just got started. So we're gonna let this thing go and see what actually happens and take it on a test drive and see if it still acts a little funny. But I do have a suspicion that it could be they poured defecate into the diesel tank. But I'm not sure if it would run this long if they did do that. I've never done that to my diesel, so I really don't know what actually happens to it. But we're about halfway done, and supposedly it's going to take an hour, and it's probably been about 30 minutes or so. I wish I had an infrared gauge. Well, actually I do. Here, hold up a second. Alright, so I want to show you guys how hot a DPF actually burns on these things. So for reference here, I know this one's not that hot, but on a skid steer, or a Caterpillar skid steer, they actually, the tailpipe is really close to the DPF, right? So you can actually light things on fire with the skid steer DPF when it's doing a regen. I measured it before, and I think it was right around 1100, 1200 degrees coming out of the tailpipe on a skid steer when it is doing an active regen. But this one, I'll show you guys. I don't know if you can read that or not, but we're sitting at, hold up, fucking glare on it. We're sitting at right around 480, 500 degrees coming out of the tailpipe, which is pretty cold, honestly, on a regen. But look at the exhaust gas temperature. It's in Celsius. I don't know what the conversion is on that, but I'm sure it's over 1,000 degrees on the EGTs. Today we took the Hemi back to the machine shop, and then they're gonna do the line bore and cam bearings in it. And yesterday I worked on this Transit 250 over here pretty much all day, just trying to troubleshoot this thing. And give you all backstory on this van. This customer gives us work when his mechanics can't fix it. So they've been all over this thing too, and they couldn't find anything wrong with it, and I literally troubleshot it all day yesterday, and it's throwing some pretty funky codes. One of the codes is a cam to crank correlation, and it's a diesel. And if that is a problem, that means that one of the metal gears have spun some way, somehow, because in a diesel there is no timing chain or belt. It's all gear driven. And that code popped on me yesterday after fiddling around with it for quite some time. And so pretty much what this thing's doing is you try to start it and it turns right off. You try to start it, turns right off. And it's acting like it's a fuel problem. I drained the fuel out of the fuel line and caught it in a clear bottle to see if there's any depth in it, and it looks pretty clean to me. We're getting fuel pressure, we're getting high fuel pressure. The only thing that's pretty concerning is when you turn the truck off, all the fuel pressure in the rail goes immediately to zero. So it's like it's leaking off. And whether it's a hung injector or that's pretty much all it could be on this engine. It's literally, there is no relief valve in the fuel rail. It has a pressure sensor, but it doesn't have a relief in the fuel rail. So either it's draining off the injection pump or it's draining on the injectors. And I don't know how, if this thing's, if it's fine, you know, I don't really know. There's really no information on this 3.2 diesel engine anywhere online, and it seems to be a pretty common problem what's going on with this thing. And when it runs fine at idle, but the only thing is it skips a little bit. Like you feel like a little, you know, jolt in the engine every now and again when it's actually running. And I've had that problem before on a Mercedes, but the Mercedes, you know, I don't know, you know, Mercedes is pretty smart about their engines. It'll pop a code at the smallest little issue. But on the Mercedes, we changed that one. Like that one was a completely different story. That one had DEF in the fuel system, all this other jazz. But we changed the quantity or fuel volume control solenoid, and it fixed the issue. So this one, I'm thinking it's the same thing, but at the same time, we got the cam to crank correlation code, and the RPMs are all over the place when you try to start it. Like if you look at the tach, it'll shoot up to like 4,000 RPMs, and it's not even running. Whether, you know, that's coincidence or not, it's definitely not right. And also the starter's going bad or the flywheel is stripped, either one, which it was like that when it came in. And so we looked at that, and then like the original code on here was for not enough air volume detected is what the code was, and it wouldn't ignite the DPF. I checked the throttle plate in the engine. That's free, it's clear, there's nothing there. I unplugged the turbo, took the turbo hose off. The turbo's good, it's making boost. And I ran it without the turbo hose on the intake, just to see if maybe there's a block in the intake and just eliminate it. And I really noticed something funky there. So when I undid the intake, I tested it, and I, you know, smashed the gas pedal once it started, and it takes forever to come up. And it's like it's coming up really slow, and then next thing you know, it like the engine just completely freezes up and it slams, you know, red line. Like it just, you know, slowly, and then boom. And then it's completely free after that. Like you can rev it up all day long. Like it's fine. And it's just only when you first start it is doing it. And it's like I said, it's not throwing any kind of codes besides the cam correlation code right now. And obviously induced codes that I unplugged a bunch of stuff to eliminate it. And so I really am at kind of a loss at this one. And the guy, pretty much this guy, he uses this van as rental for Amazon, and he is crying about this thing. I mean, he is in dire need for it. And so I priced out a bunch of different things for this truck. We're gonna do the fuel filter first, just to eliminate that, because we don't know when he's doing his maintenance. We're also gonna do a cam and crank sensor to eliminate those, and then I think I'm gonna order the fuel volume control valve or control solenoid on the injection pump. And also we got to replace the starter or the flywheel, one of the two. Once we pull the starter out, we'll figure that one out. But I'll show you guys now what's actually going on with it, and see if I can get it on camera here. So Watch the RPM gauge here. Oh, you could tell the starter's messed up. There's no way it's reaching 1,000 RPMs. It's literally no way. It literally bumps over and it hits 1,000. And sometimes it'll shoot up to 3 and freak out. Whoops. Look at that. What, the engine's not even running. Like, seems to me like that's a fuel problem in the engine. And like one of the first things I did once I got it running was I did a power balance test once it got warmed to check the injectors slash, you know, the cylinders in a way electronically. And they all tested good. They were all right there together. It wasn't nothing like, you know, crazy off. On every single injector is fine. And they already replaced one injector. And it's all the rest are fine. It's really hard to say what this issue is. Like I said, we got everything that we need. So something is telling the engine to shut off right when it starts. There is something telling it to turn off. And I'm really wondering if it's the cam to crank correlation, even though like when it's running it says it's in sync. But there could be, you know, a glitch somewhere on the, you know, the sensor or something. It could be reading a little bit wrong at the start. It's really, like I said, it's really hard to say about this one. And like you look at the dosage on the injectors and everything seems to be literally perfectly fine. And the only way I can get this thing to start is to unplug the map sensor, which the map sensor is reading right. It's just you're tricking the computer when you unplug it. Try to get this thing actually started here. Yeah, it won't even start now. This morning, it took me a long time yesterday to get it started. And then the other thing I noticed too that was a little bit odd, and like I said, I don't know much about these particular engines and what they're known for. But when you undid the drain for the injectors or whatever you want to call it, the fuel return for the injectors, it was making a lot of bubbles, which it's kind of weird. How does the injectors coming out of the injector have bubbles in it? It's kind of interesting. Like when I worked at Caterpillar, we would do the same test, but with a clear fuel bowl and, you know, flipped upside or straight up and down with the inlet and the outlet. And when there's bubbles in the fuel system coming out of the injector, it means you have a leaking cup or injector seal, depends on how they are. Done plenty of cups and injectors because of it, but like I said, I don't know this system. There's no tests for that on this thing. There's nothing you know, it's pretty much a shot in the dark, honestly. And with these engines, they're very expensive just to throw parts at. But so I'm really trying to get this thing narrowed down to a few things we can replace. Since, like I said, this guy is super hot for this thing. It's not the way we usually work here. Usually I narrow it down to, you know, obviously one thing. But when somebody's pressuring you every single day for a vehicle and has unlimited money, you just do what they want. You know what I mean? So that's what the deal is on this one. Let me know down in the comments if y'all had this problem before or have seen this issue on these 3.2 Power Strokes. They're not really a Power Stroke, it's a Puma engine or whatever you want to call it. But so yeah, we're gonna change all that stuff for you. That's really the only thing I can see that's actually wrong with it. Then I don't know if you guys caught it in the video or not, but if you look right here, the last video I made was doing a manual regen on this thing, and it was at 89% soot load, and while I'm doing the regen, it's going up to, you know, 90. So I mean, it could be the DPF's completely jacked, and that's one thing I'm going to test today. I'm going to go ahead and disconnect the downpipe off the turbo and pray none of the bolts break. But if I can get the bolts out and undo the DPF and then try to start it again and it actually runs, then obviously the DPF is bad. And like I said, I've seen it before where people have a misfire on a diesel, or, you know, for some reason, you know, they're not doing the regen, you know, they're turning it off, bypassing it, whatever. It ends up literally destroying the DPF. Like, it's like somebody dropped a grenade inside the DPF and just went off, and it just mangles the DPF. And I can see that happen on this one, honestly, because they replaced an injector. So either they kept running it and destroyed the DPF, and now it's completely clogged on the DPF side, and it's free on the intake side, and that's why it's not doing regen. Or we have a fuel system problem where it's not allowing the engine to get hot enough, or the combustion gas to get hot enough to ignite the DPF. And the same thing with the starting. You know, we're not getting enough fuel, you know, when it's cold, because when it's warm, the thing will start up. Yesterday it started up every single time. Obviously the starter's jacked up, but every time you would, you know, hit it 1 or 2 times and it have long enough to crank, it would start and run fine. Besides like the little hiccups that we were having. It's almost like a misfire, but it's not missing. So I'm gonna do that first thing this morning is disconnect the DPF. And let me tell you guys, y'all working on these engines, I feel for you, because this thing's an absolute nightmare to work on. I had to take the whole engine apart just to get to like the intake and all that other crap. So the whole engine's disassembled right now just to figure out what the heck's going on with this thing. So I'm gonna go ahead and try to disconnect the DPF, or I'm gonna take the well, no, I can't take that out because it's gonna strip. But I say there's a like an injector, a diesel injector on the DPF. The first one on the DPF over here. There's a diesel injector right there, but that thing, the last one we did when we replaced the DPF, that thing stripped all out. I ain't gonna mess with none of that stuff unless we have to. But I am gonna try to get the bolts out of the turbo. So as you can see, I got all this stuff off. But we're definitely not gonna undo the turbo bolts back here because they are completely rusted solid. They're back here. But I undid I think it's the back pressure gauge or sensor, and shoved the camera down here and looked at the DPF, and she's definitely, I wouldn't say it's plugged up, but she's definitely sooty back there. obviously. I mean, it's a diesel, but she's definitely pretty caked on there. So as you can see, I had to remove all the fuse panel, and then I just shoved the cooler or the coolant bottle down there so I could run it. But I mean, and as you can see, this injector just got replaced, not rusty. This one's rusty, not rusty. So I'm gonna try to start it again with the back pressure sensor unplugged to see if it'll breathe. I mean, it's definitely a possibility. I'm not ruling out anything quite yet. That's one thing I haven't checked yet to see if the DPF is completely plugged. Obviously it's 90%, but Ford on their website or on AllData, it says that the DPF has up to like 100 and I think it's like 180% or something like that for where the engine won't start. How true that is, I really don't know. So we're gonna try to start it once again with that unplugged. Alright guys, so after like 30 minutes of just cranking this thing, I finally starting to get it to start. We definitely have a fuel problem here, even though we're getting fuel pressure. So if we look here at the desired and actual, I don't think it's getting enough fuel at the startup. Even though we're getting fuel pressure, it's just like we're getting tons of fuel pressure, but it won't actually hear it. And then I got my foot on the gas to start it. Like, we're getting fuel pressure, like it's acting right. But then you let it sit here and idle, and boop, she dies. And then look at the fuel pressure dropping. We definitely have a fuel related issue on this truck. There is something it is not happy about. And the bad part is on this van is there really is no info on this thing. It's just steadily dropping fuel pressure. We're at 600 PSI right now, and that's the engine won't even start unless it's warm. That's the thing. You gotta keep doing it until the engine starts getting warmer. But we have no codes for low fuel pressure. But the flow of fuel could be low. You could have that solenoid getting stuck on the injection pump. That controls how much fuel you're actually getting. So I'm pretty sure that's what it's going to be, even though there's no code for it. Just because, like I said, I've seen this before. And it's just a really hard one to figure out unless you deal with this, you know, van every day working on them. And I do not. So that's what I'm shooting for, honestly, on this thing. It's not an injector problem. It's not a low fuel pressure problem because we're getting a ton of fuel from the fuel pump. But the high pressure one, all you can really go off of is all you can go off of on the high pressure fuel is obviously the scan tool, but you don't know, the volume it's putting out. And with it getting warmer, it could be the high pressure pump going bad. this is a newer van. It's a 2018 Transit 250, whereas the old ones, they had TSBs for that solenoid, where there's metal getting into that solenoid and not letting the engine run. Or it could be the injection pump going bad and not having enough flow to feed the injectors, even though we're getting the pressure. It's one of the two things there. Is something wrong with the injection pump, and there's something wrong with that solenoid, is my guesstimate. Put it that way. It just makes sense. Because the DPF's open right now. I have it unplugged or disconnected. So we know that the DPF's not getting choked out, or not choking the engine. We know the intake's not choking the engine. And we know there's no sensors messing up the engine. The throttle plate's open. There's no runner in the intakes, like for to warm up the engine. It, uses the flaps to warm the engine up. And I'll show you what that looks like. Alright, so this is a Mercedes diesel engine, right? Really ain't got a flashlight, but this intake right here is completely plugged. Not really plugged, but it's sooted up. And that's from the EGR and oil leaking. And then this is what I thought was the original problem with the Transit here. See that throttle plate? I thought the Transit was going to be the same thing, where it's completely plugged and the flap's not able to move. And then if you look, I'm not sure where it's at. Alright, so we're back looking at this now. I thought the Transit had these intake runners right here. And those actually shut off, like I said, to warm the engine, or for the DPF, for regeneration or EGR. That's what they're for. So I thought the Transit had the same thing, and that could be choking out the engine, not letting it start. But it's definitely not that, because this Transit doesn't have this style of flaps. And then you can see it's already out of this one. The plug's in the way. So there is your fuel control valve, or solenoid, or volume control solenoid on the injection pump on a Mercedes. And I'm pretty sure that's what's going on with this Transit as well. It's the only thing that makes sense. So I'm going to go ahead and order the volume control solenoid for the Transit, and I'm going to order a new starter for it. And hopefully they have it in stock, and hopefully that fixes it. I'm pretty sure it will. It's either that's going to need an injection pump, but we're going to start cheap first. Because we know that it's not the injectors. That we've done the power balance test, we've done the leak test on the injectors. They're pretty good. Wouldn't say they're abnormally leaking out the little bypass tube on the injector. Like I said, the only concern I had with it was blowing bubbles, which, I mean, that could be good or bad. I really don't know, like I said, on this engine. But anyways, we're going to do that really quick. And then if this guy, the other guy, doesn't show up again, then I'm going to walk you guys through this Mercedes here. Because obviously, we can't figure it out. Put it that way, in the lamest terms. So, that's that. The machine shop called in this morning. They're going to have to put cam bearings in it, and they're going to do the line home today. And then I'll do the full build on this engine, and it'll be all one video again. I'm I'm pretty sure that's how I'm gonna start doing the videos. Is I'm gonna instead of skipping around on different cars and stuff like that, which that's how my older videos were, was just skipping around and showing you like day to day what's going on here. And we're really busy, so that is what it is. We skip around waiting on parts because parts are a huge issue right now. So instead of doing that, I'm gonna put all the videos that I make all together on every single vehicle until they're complete, so it doesn't look like, you know, we don't know what the hell we're doing, when in reality we do, because we get all the vehicles that dealerships can't fix. Literally, that is what we get here. I can't tell you how many times we've seen vehicles where people have spent thousands of dollars at the dealership, and then they tell them that they just need to replace the engine. And it's like, people literally don't have money to even own the car, let alone the maintenance on a car, and now you're telling them they need a $20,000 engine. Like, so that's the work that we get in, and it's because I accept it, because I am the manager here in the shop, and it is a challenge. I mean, to say the least. We've had a lot of customers come in, and literally they've been to 4 or 5 different specialty shops and get crazy estimates from them, and reality, all it needs is literally a $10 wire ran over top the engine harness, which is pretty unfortunate because I'm sure a lot of people will pay it, and that's pretty ignorant in my opinion. So anyways, let's get back to it here. And then for this diesel van, this is what I'm working on. The other guy's working on the Beamer, but this diesel van out here, this 3.2 Duratorq or Puma. So yesterday I didn't really videotape because I was cussing a lot, but deep down in here is the fuel volume control valve, and I replaced that yesterday along with the starter. And long story short, it was pretty much a gamble. That was the volume control valve, but the guy, like I said, is in a rush because he has a deal with Amazon, and he really needs a truck. So I ordered it, and it definitely did not fix it. I mean, that was pretty much a shot in the dark. So now I'm re-troubleshooting it. I messed around with it late last night, and I'm pretty sure the EGR valve is actually getting stuck on the truck. Because if I command the EGR valve fully open, it stalls the engine out almost immediately. So I'm thinking that the EGR flap is actually broken in the truck, and it's, you know, flopping around. I have seen some videos of that happening. It gets, you know, a lot of idle hours. It gets stuck from all the soot buildup. So I'm wondering if it's getting stuck, because it sounds like the engine is literally under load when you fire it up. Like, you fire it up, you hit it, you smack it to the floor, and it doesn't even jump up in RPMs. It's like, it literally sounds like I'm power braking it. Turbo spools up. It sounds like it's creating a ton of boost, and the next thing you know, the engine's free. And I know the EGR, if that thing's open, it can cause, you know, the engine to stall because it's not under load and it's not getting metered. It's just dumping exhaust into the intake, which is not good, and will cause the engine to stall, turn off, whatever the case may be. So I'm gonna pull the pipe off, or the actuator off the top of it, and try to manually operate the EGR valve shut, and try to start it. And if it runs, and it runs great, then that's our problem. Because literally last night I commanded it open, and then I have the exhaust disconnected, and it started just blowing soot out when I was trying to start it. And to me, I think it's plugged, or fully open. I really don't know quite yet, but there's something's killing the engine. It's not injectors, it's not the injection pump. I mean, the truck only has 80,000 miles on it, so It's not def in the fuel tank. It's not a clogged DPF. It's not a clogged intake. So it's got to be that or electronic. And it keeps popping cam and crank codes. And I think that's because it's shutting the engine off like immediately. It's always rolling the engine backwards when it turns off, because it turns off so fast. And then the RPMs go crazy. I don't think it's really a cam or crank code or a cam or crank issue. So yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and pull that off, and then hopefully it'll be fixed, or hopefully that will fix it. But I will let you guys know, because there's literally no information on these 3.2 engines from Ford. I do know they're junk. I mean, they're an absolute nightmare to work on too. So we will see. Yeah, eliminated the EGR, stalling the engine out, eliminated the intake if it had a blockage in it, and it's still stalled out. No codes besides cam and crank sensor codes, and I think that's because the engine's shutting off so fast that it rolls the engine backwards. So after doing a lot of digging on it, and it was like the first thing I checked when the truck came in here was the fuel, to see if it had DEF in it or gas. And the guy, pretty sure the guy's lying to us about the whole thing. Especially after what I found. And I found it multiple times, but I didn't really want to believe it, because the guy pretty much was telling us that it didn't happen, right? And that they put gas or DEF into the diesel tank and drove it, and it went back to his shop, and they did a one injector in it, because I found one injector brand new, and he's telling me that he was just driving the truck and it just died on him, right? I don't think that's the case. I think he was having issues, and then they fixed the issues and drove it, and then it finally died. And because it has clean diesel in it, and it's not adding up. The fuel system just doesn't go for no reason, right? I mean, they do, but not on a really low mileage vehicle. But I'm gonna try to show you guys this. I don't know if I'm gonna be able to get it on camera, but put the light on it. So this is right out of the fuel cooler line that's on top of the engine. And I don't know if you're going to be able to see it or not. It's like mega bright. Alright, you might be able to see that. Maybe. I don't know if you can see that stuff glistening in the pan. I don't know. I don't think you'll be able to see it on video, but pretty much I think what happened to the truck, so pretty much what happened to the truck is somebody put DEF into it or gas into it, and they drove it. They wiped the system, started misfiring, they replaced one injector, and then the guy went to go drive it again thinking it was fixed, and it's not fixed. And it wiped the whole system out. And in the pan is nothing but super fine metal, and metal clogs things up in a diesel engine. Here's all 5 of the injectors. I pulled them all out to see if the tip was blown off of them, to see if it wiped the engine out as well. So when the injection pump goes and sends metal and everything, a lot of times, not a lot of times, but sometimes the metal goes into the injector, blocks up the tip, it gets hot, and it pops the tip off, and then there goes the engine. And I've seen it happen before. The injector will burn a hole into the cylinder. It'll, throw a piston out of the engine. There's a lot of things that could happen. And keep in mind, this bucket was spotless. I washed it out with water, soap, and everything. Literally, completely a brand new bucket. So that means that the whole fuel system has to get replaced. This truck has 2 low pressure pumps, one to feed the depth injector, and one that feeds the engine and the injection pump cooler. And all of that has to get replaced. New hoses, new injection pump, all new injectors. I mean, you could flush the lines, but it's not really. I mean, if you just buy the lines, it's going to be cheaper than labor flushing them, because all of it's got to come out anyways. So that's what's going on with the Transit. And I would have found this problem a long time ago if the guy was actually honest what was going on with it. Like I said, I pulled a fuel sample for I think twice now, and it had metal in both times. And I just didn't know if the bucket was dirty or whatever the case may be. But this time I made sure it was absolutely spotless, and it's just super fine metal. And I didn't see anything in the low pressure fuel filter. When we took it out, I didn't cut it open or anything because I really wasn't expecting the injection pump to be bad, or something went through the fuel system, because the fuel is clean. But like I said, I think they drained it out, they flushed it all out, and thought they could get away with it. And the damage is already done at that point. So that one is going to be a pretty pricey bill. I guess I could show you guys how much it's actually going to be. I'm sure y'all are curious, especially and y'all probably curious about the Dodge as well. So I think I'm going to show you guys what it cost us to fix these cars. So I don't know, maybe I'll do it, I don't know. And this is the Beamer with the broken, so the injectors were leaking through this little O-ring right here, causing misfires. And the back 2 cylinders are the 2 injectors that are completely frozen in the hole. So now we tried, and now the head's got to come off on this one, and that's what he's working on. This leaf, you gotta do a lower control arm on. Got it in here charging. This is leaving today. Got that massive charger. I've never owned an electric vehicle or messed with one, but that seems a little excessive to me. Got a new engine here, a junkyard engine for the Sentra outside. Literally paid $300 for this thing. I mean, you literally can't beat it. And then the Range Rover engine is going to go in probably next week. Still got the bike in here. The guy's coming to get his toolbox today, finally. That's literally been a year since he's left. So it gives us some room to put 3 engines. We literally have the Mercedes engine, the Range Rover, and now a Sentra engine up in here. And so yeah, all these vehicles got to go, but we're just literally just way too busy right now.